Every single one of us is running out of time. When we are born, the clock starts ticking, and it never stops, but it also never negotiates. So maybe that's why we are obsessed with immortality, because there is only one thing that we can't really control, which is time. So we build entire mythologies and legends around creatures that can stop time. For example, dragons who see empires rise and fall, or unicorns who have been untouched for centuries by human nature. And we envy these creatures. We call them lucky. We believe that if we had this power over time, we would be unstoppable. But here is the question that I kept asking myself whilst reading this book. What if immortality isn't actually the gift we think it is? What if what makes us human, and what if the thing that makes us be grateful for the life that we have is the fact that this life can end? Today's book puts an immortal creature into a mortal body and lets her find out the answers for herself. Let's talk about The Last Unicorn by Beagle. Hello, my gorgeous viewers and readers. Welcome back, and welcome if you're new. Today, I want to differ a little bit from our usual dark academia and gothic horror lineup. Today, I want to talk about a truly fantasy classic. If you've ever read The Last Unicorn, you know for a fact that this book is considered one of the foundational novels or stories within the fantasy genre of 20th and 21st century. Many of the authors that we consider truly generational for us right now have been inspired by this book or by any of the books that Beagle has released in his time. This book is whimsical on the surface, talking creatures, evil magicians, legends, and mythology. But underneath all these fairy tales, there is one of the most devastating commentaries on mortality, on longing, but also on what it truly means to be alive that I have ever seen in this genre. So let's talk about The Last Unicorn and why it has stayed in readers' hearts for over 50 years. This story follows a unicorn who lives in her perfect lilac forest, existing in an undisturbed eternal spring, until one day two hunters come by and mention out loud that she might be the last unicorn on earth, meaning that all the rest of the unicorns have disappeared. The unicorn is unable to accept this news because she feels in her heart that there are other unicorns in the world waiting for her. So she decides to embark in an adventure and leaves the forest to find out what has happened to the rest of her kind. Eventually, she is joined by two different characters, Schmendrick, who is a magician whose magic doesn't really work the way it should be and it always turns out strangely, and Molly Grew, who is a weary woman who doesn't really believe in magic until she meets the unicorn herself. And all three of them embark in an adventure to find out more about King Haggard, who is apparently connected to the disappearance of all the unicorns. But King Haggard, who is a joyless and hollow ruler obsessed with beauty and possession, is not alone. He has an immortal creature called the Red Bull, which is a monstrous and fiery beast who is actually driving all the unicorns into the sea next to King Haggard's castle. As they get closer to the castle, they get ambushed by the Red Bull itself because he can smell and notice the presence of the unicorn. So in order for her not to have the same destiny or the same fate as the rest of the unicorns, Schmendrick actually decides to turn her into a human woman, which is called Lady Amalthea. But living inside a mortal human body actually makes the unicorn experience things that she has never experienced before. So hunger, thirst, anger, and even emotions for other characters and other people, especially for the Prince Lear, who is King Haggard's adopted son. But the closer she gets to the prince and also to the other characters, the more she forgets that she is an immortal creature, that she is a unicorn, and why she is in this castle in the first place, which is finding out what is happening or what has happened to the unicorns themselves. Underneath this fairy tale like structure, the last unicorn actually brings us something so much sharper. It's actually holding a mirror in front of us so we can see what human nature actually looks like. And as I was reading this book, I kept thinking about three main topics that I see very clearly in this book and that are related to our human nature. The first one is our own inferiority complex and why this complex makes us greedy. And most importantly is the actual cost of immortality and what are the things that we might lose if we become immortal. Starting with humanity's inferiority complex, if we look into fantasy as a genre as a whole, we see that we almost always talk or write about human heroes. So farm boys who become kings, or allegedly ordinary girls who become legends, and even normal human beings that end up being the chosen ones. This pattern is everywhere, and I don't think it is an accident because we keep hearing legends and myths about ordinary people. But I think this tells more than just our creativity and imagination. It actually tells us that we have the need to feel special. We have the need to be these grandiose characters and these grandiose heroes in order for us to feel like we have accomplished something. And we keep telling these stories over and over again because we know that deep down we are not special. We live under such a vast and enormous world that we know that we are just one dot in the whole history of time. So we need to create all these stories and all these legends for us to feel like we have accomplished something, but also because it motivates us to be better. And this book flips this formula completely because the main character is the unicorn. She is eternal. She is untouchable. She is magic herself. She is everything that humans want to be. And that is why there are so many of the characters that want to touch her, that want to own her, and that want the magic that she has. Because underneath all these desires for ownership and obsession, there is something that is very natural for us as humans, and it's the longing and the desire to be magical. And that is one of the most realistic things that we can see in this book. We desire to be magical, to be eternal, and to be whimsical. Now, going into human greed and immortality, that is something that I also saw very clearly in this book. And it's the fact that this inferiority complex that humans have as a natural existence usually turns into greed. We as a species, we are very greedy. We always have the desire to have more, to be more than others, because this complex that we have that makes us feel inferior, we try to fill it up with things, with material things that at the end of the day have no sense for us to have. And this is very obviously seen in many of the characters in this book, not only King Haggard, who is very obviously greedy, but in characters like Prince Leigh, Schmendrick, and even Molly Grew, for example. We see with Prince Leigh, for example, that even though he is one of the good guys, that he is a hero, he has a desire to own and to have the ownership over Lady Amalthea because she is special and he knows that. And also Schmendrick, for example, he doesn't really want to turn Lady Amalthea back into becoming a unicorn because if he does, he will come mortal once again. And even Molly Crew, for example, she doesn't want Schmendrick to turn Lady Amalthea into a unicorn once again because that means that if she turns into a unicorn, she will disappear and she will have no contact with her anymore. And this is exactly how people or how humans behave around immortality. Historically, many civilizations have been obsessed with immortality. We see this in ancient China, for example. We see this in Native American civilizations. And we even see this in the West with ancient Greek and also ancient Egyptian civilizations. And even nowadays, we still have an obsession with being as youthful as we can, or to live as long as we can with crazy diets, crazy vitamins, or even crazy exercises. We do everything we can in our power to stay alive as long as possible. Because if we are being real, death is the true one equalizer. It doesn't matter if you are successful or not, if you're rich or not, or if you're beautiful or not. You, like everyone else, will die eventually. So that is why there is such an obsession with, or there was such an obsession with immortality, but also at the same time of looking as youthful as possible, because that is the one thing that can make you feel special. If you truly are the one person who can escape death, you are not like everyone else. You truly are the one special exception. Now, talking about the reality of immortality, if we look into fantasy or even into mythology, we see that immortality or becoming immortal makes you a god, right? We see this with elf races, for example, or we see this with all the gods in ancient Greece or ancient China, for example. We see how you becoming immortal makes you part of the godlike creatures or beings. But in this book, we see that actually maybe there is another side of the coin when it comes to immortality. Maybe immortality is not as great as we think. Maybe immortality is actually a curse. Before her transformation, the unicorn's life is beautiful, but it's also empty in a way she doesn't really understand. She lives in eternal spring, but also in eternal solitude. And it isn't until she is forced to transform into a mortal body that she truly understands what it is to be mortal. She feels hunger, she feels that thirst, and she eventually feels love. And that is when she actually understands what is the cost of immortality, which is companionship. She feels connection. She feels like she truly belongs to this group. She has emotions towards Molly Groot, towards Schmendrick, and even towards the Prinsley. She truly feels like she belongs with humans. And it isn't until she turns back into being a unicorn that she realizes the true cost of immortality. Because yes, she might never age, she might never die, and she will live in this wonderful lilac forest that she loves so much, but she has lost everything that made life worth living. And here is where all these 3 points collide, because we as humans are hunting for immortality because we feel inferior. And this greediness is what makes us hunt for this immortality, because we want to have the one thing that will truly makes us special, which is escaping death. But the last unicorn argues, and actually quite devastatingly so, that the one thing that we are running from, that is mortality, grief, and the sense of mourning, is what makes life worth living. Because if we had an eternal life, we wouldn't be grateful for the things that we have now. If we didn't know what hunger was, how could we truly be grateful for food? If we didn't have connection, if we didn't have any friends or no family, how would we truly know when we are connected to others? And that is the tragedy at the heart of this book. Not that the last unicorn lost her mortality, but that she understood the beauty of mortal life the moment she had to relinquish this mortality. As a quick conclusion, The Last Unicorn looks like a gentle fairy tale like novel where you look at immortal creatures that go on an adventure. But in reality, this book is much more deeper and darker than that. It is one of the most honest books about why mortality might be the greatest gift of all. Because, yes, we don't have eternal time, but because of that, every decision that we make, every person we decide to love, and every little moment that we decide to notice means much more than if we had eternal life. That's all for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching and for staying until the end. Before you go, I would love to ask you guys a question, and it's, do you think the unicorn's ending is actually a tragedy, or do you think it is a blessing, the fact that she is now immortal once again? Let me know in the comments. I would love to discuss with you. And if you like this video, please make sure that you like and subscribe to my channel. And if you would like, you can also follow me on my social media. I post there every day, and I will post more content about the last unicorn. But yeah, that's all for today, guys. Thank you so much for staying, and I will see you next week. Bye.